Alright, this week I'm finishing off the roof over the deck, and whilst I was doing it I was thinking, shelter is actually pretty simple, just a few walls and a roof. So why is it that it has just become insanely complex, and is there anything that we can do about it?
We live in the most advanced age of human history. We can summon food, news, or entertainment instantly with a tap of a finger. But despite all this progress, why does everything feel harder than it should? Survival is simple. We need food, we need water, and we need shelter. Yet each of these basics has been wrapped in layers of cost, systems, and red tape. I'm finishing off this deck by extending the roof and adding a step. Compared to the way most modern houses are built now, this probably appears closer to a kid building a treehouse. But for me, this is about functionality, and this is really all we need. In nature, every creature builds simply. Birds build nests, rabbits dig burrows, and beavers shape dams. The purpose is survival, warmth, protection, and a place to rest. Humans are fragile without shelter. Unlike animals with thick hides and fur, we'd perish in the wrong climate in winter. Could it be that to build shelter is written into our DNA, one of the most primal acts we can take? And yet somewhere along the way this most basic need was hijacked. Shelter, like everything else, has become a product. Last week I made a video about building and regulation, and some of the comments were striking. People talked about legislation so complex and expensive that the paperwork ended up costing more than the build itself. When rules become heavier than the walls they are meant to protect, it makes you wonder how far we've drifted from the simple act of putting up shelter. Today, a house is no longer just four walls and a roof. It's a lifestyle brand, and a mortgage, and a resale value, and a design trend. Something to show rather than simply somewhere to live. Building codes and endless compliance means that shelter has drifted away from its core purpose. That's why modest projects like building a deck or a roof or a shed, they kind of feel important to us and fun. They cut through all the noise. They remind us what shelter is supposed to be, just some protection and enough to shelter from the elements.
To screw the panels in, I can either keep going up and down the ladder, which gets a bit boring, or I can just put a piece of corrugated iron on the roof and sit on that instead. Not very comfortable, but it's quicker.
Our bus is a fairly small space to live in, but by adding this deck and putting a roof on it, we are more than doubling our living space. It has already made a massive difference to our lifestyle. We sit out here and we enjoy it year round, and we eat a lot of our meals on here too. With this new roof extension, I can cook on the barbecue in the middle of winter in a rainstorm and be perfectly dry. So the upgrade to our lives is pretty huge, but the cost is minimal, just some timber and my time and effort. I once did a job in Madagascar. I saw homes built from palm fronds. They were so basic, but they worked. Because their homes were so simple, people didn't need to work long hours or spend decades paying off debt. They had what they needed, and that was enough. Of course, I'm not living under palm fronds, and I'm not suggesting that any of us should, but here's the parallel. I'm building something that suits our climate and is sufficient for our needs, that doesn't require debt. But it isn't only shelter that has become complicated. The same pattern shows up everywhere. Banking, taxes, healthcare, government forms, systems designed to help us often feel bewildering. Technology promised to make life easier, and sometimes it does, but sometimes it leaves us with endless logins, subscriptions and updates. Even our leisure has been complicated. Hours lost scrolling through endless streaming options or down rabbit holes of distraction. On the whole, it all works seamlessly, but every now and again you fall through the cracks and end up in administration hell. Futile phone calls, a robotic "your call is important to us," and two-factor codes sent to an email address you no longer own. The caveman in you wants to hurl your laptop out the window and retreat to the jungle. Complexity has become the default mode of modern life. But here's the distinction. Challenge is not the same as complexity. Challenge is meaningfully difficult. It's building something, growing food, or learning skills. It's the frustration of getting it wrong and the satisfaction of finally getting it right. Complexity, on the other hand, is pointlessly difficult. Paperwork, red tape, 1,000 friction points that lead nowhere. It's also endless. It's like shoveling snow from an Alaskan driveway. Humans thrive on difficulty, but we drown in complication. And yet, there are signs of change. All over the world, people are turning back to making. Online communities are full of van conversions, tiny homes, cabins restored from ruins. YouTube has become a kind of library of skills, freely shared and endlessly creative. It feels at times like a quiet renaissance, a kind of rediscovery of the abilities that previous generations took for granted. Having all the world's information in our pocket is beyond amazing. Even the most powerful people in history had nothing close to what we can access now. We should, by rights, be running around delighted with ourselves, as if we've won the information jackpot. But, of course, we don't. We adapt. We take it for granted. That's the strange paradox of our age. Abundance has made us indifferent. We've become used to building codes and regulations, many of them designed with big cities in mind. Applied to us at a micro level, they make us feel like we're trapped inside an enormous system. one too large to shift or change. And that leads to another layer of the story, one about scale. Modern systems have grown so vast that they feel untouchable. Governments, financial institutions, even wars, they operate at a size where ordinary people feel powerless. The bigger the system, the smaller we feel. But meaning lives at the human scale. A spade in the dirt makes more sense than another endless, idiotic political argument. Building a deck, growing a garden, cooking a meal, these are acts that shrink life back to a size we can understand. Building a deck isn't going to fix the world, but it might fix my brain. We can't shrink the world's problems, but we can shrink our own world to a scale that makes sense. And maybe that's enough. Sometimes those small acts ripple outward. Helping our families, our neighbours, our communities. A shared meal, a repaired fence, a garden that produces more than we need. These are gifts that spread meaning beyond our own doorstep. That might be the bigger truth. We can't untangle all the complexity of the modern world, but we can reclaim pieces of simplicity. A deck, a roof, a garden. Small acts of making that bring us back to ourselves. Freedom for me isn't about removing all the difficulties, but about choosing which ones bring meaning. And in a world where everything feels more complicated than it should, the antidote is to choose simplicity and to find joy in it. Maybe that's all life was ever meant to be.
I'm so happy how this turned out. It's really nice to have some shade under here. If you want to take this conversation further, I will link to a playlist. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next week.